Somalia-Ethiopia dispute. Somalia recently expelled the Ethiopian ambassador and closed consulates in response to a port deal dispute with Somaliland AL. The main reasons for the tensions between Somalia and Ethiopia can be summed up in 2 points. 1. Ogaden dispute. This centers on the Ogaden region, located in eastern Ethiopia with a predominantly Somali population. Somalia has long had claims to the territory, fueling past wars and border skirmishes. 2. Fragile Somalia and Somaliland. Somalia's civil war weakened the central government. Meanwhile, Somaliland, a breakaway region in northern Somalia, seeks independence. Ethiopia's dealings with Somaliland, like the recent port deal, anger Somalia's government, who see it as undermining their territorial integrity. These tensions recently reached a boiling point. Somalia took a drastic step by expelling the Ethiopian ambassador and shutting down Ethiopian consulates in Somalia. This dramatic move was a direct response to a port deal between Ethiopia and Somaliland, a breakaway region that Somalia considers part of its territory. The spark for the Ethiopian-Somali conflict lies in the Ogaden, a large, arid region in eastern Ethiopia inhabited mostly by Somalis. Here's a quick rundown of the historical tensions. Disputed territory. The seeds were sown during colonial times. European powers carved up the region, and after World War II, Britain returned the Ogaden to Ethiopia, angering Somalis who felt a kinship with the ethnic Somalis there. First War, 1964. Somalia's discontent boiled over into a war in 1964, fueled by Somali irredentism, the desire to unite all Somali-inhabited lands. Ethiopia, with superior military force, pushed back Somali forces. Cold War twist. 1977. The conflict escalated during the Cold War. Somalia, initially backed by the Soviets, invaded the Ogaden in 1977. However, the Soviets switched sides to Ethiopia due to a communist regime change there. This shift, along with Cuban military aid to Ethiopia, led to Somalia's defeat. These wars and the unresolved Ogaden question continue to cast a shadow over relations between the two countries. It's important to mention the rise of Somalia's civil war in the context of the Ethiopian-Somali tensions. Here's how it fits in. Internal turmoil. Following the failed Ogaden invasion of 1977, Somalia's authoritarian government became increasingly repressive. Discontentment grew, culminating in a brutal civil war in 1991. Power vacuum. The civil war fractured Somalia, leading to the collapse of the central government. Warlords carved up the country, further weakening any unified Somali stance on the Ogaden issue. This internal chaos in Somalia significantly weakened their position in any potential confrontation with Ethiopia. It also allowed the breakaway region of Somaliland to declare independence in 1991, creating another layer of complexity in the Horn of Africa. Here's a breakdown of the breakaway region of Somaliland and its desire for independence. Distinct identity. Somaliland, in northwestern Somalia, has a long history and a distinct cultural identity separate from southern Somalia. They have their own flag, currency, and government. Colonial legacy. The British ruled Somaliland as a protectorate separate from southern Somalia, which was colonized by Italy. This colonial division contributed to a sense of difference. Dissatisfaction with Mogadishu. Somalilanders felt marginalized by the central government in Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia. They believed their interests were neglected, leading to a desire for self-rule. Civil war opportunity. With the outbreak of Somalia's civil war in 1991, Somaliland saw a chance to declare independence. They established a relatively stable and peaceful region within Somalia's borders. However, Somaliland's independence remains unrecognized by the international community. Somalia views Somaliland as a breakaway region and continues to claim the territory. This unresolved issue adds another layer of tension to the already complex relationship between Somalia and Ethiopia. The recent flashpoint in the Ethiopia-Somalia tensions is the controversial port deal between Ethiopia and Somaliland. Here's why it's so sensitive. Landlocked Ethiopia's need. Ethiopia, a large country with a booming economy, lacks direct access to the sea. This hinders its ability to trade efficiently. Somaliland's strategic location. Somaliland controls Berbera, a strategically located port city on the Gulf of Aden. This deal grants Ethiopia access to Berbera 4. O naval base. Ethiopia could potentially establish a naval presence, something Somalia would see as a threat. O commercial port, Ethiopia could use Berbera for its imports and exports, bypassing Djibouti, its current main port access point. Undermining Somalia's claim. The biggest issue for Somalia is that this deal directly undermines their claim over Somaliland. By negotiating with Somaliland, Ethiopia appears to legitimize their independence, which Somalia vehemently opposes. This port deal is a major point of contention because it touches on several sensitive nerves: Ethiopia's economic needs, Somaliland's desire for recognition, and Somalia's territorial integrity. Somalia's outrage over the port deal with Somaliland stems from a combination of factors. Sovereignty violation. From Somalia's perspective, Ethiopia negotiating directly with Somaliland is a blatant disregard for their territorial claims. They see it as Ethiopia meddling in their internal affairs and undermining their sovereignty over the entire Somali territory. Legitimizing Somaliland, the deal feels like a betrayal to Somalia. By engaging with Somaliland, Ethiopia appears to be giving legitimacy to their independence movement, a move Somalia fiercely opposes. Security concerns. The potential establishment of an Ethiopian naval base in Berbera raises security concerns for Somalia. They might fear increased Ethiopian military presence near their borders. Economic rivalry. There's a possibility that Berbera could become a major trade hub, potentially drawing business away from Somali ports. Somalia's response of expelling the Ethiopian ambassador and closing consulates is a strong signal of their anger and frustration. It's a way of severing diplomatic ties and putting pressure on Ethiopia to back down from the port deal. It also shows other countries how seriously Somalia takes the issue of its territorial integrity. Somalia's drastic action of expelling the Ethiopian ambassador and closing consulates has raised concerns about the potential consequences. Let's hear from a news report. Analysts are also weighing in on the situation. Here's what a Horn of Africa security expert has to say. Interviewer: thank you for joining us today. The situation between Somalia and Ethiopia seems very tense. Can this current dispute escalate into violence? Horn of Africa security expert: thank you for having me. Unfortunately, the potential for violence is very real. Here's why. History of conflict. As we discussed, Somalia and Ethiopia have a long history of conflict, particularly over the Ogaden region. This underlying tension creates a volatile environment where any incident can spark a wider confrontation. Proxy war risk. Both Somalia and Ethiopia support armed groups within the other's territory. A further deterioration in relations could lead to a proxy war, where these groups become pawns in a larger conflict. Miscalculation risk. Miscalculations on either side can easily escalate tensions. For example, an accidental border skirmish or perceived act of aggression could trigger a military response. Interviewer: that's a very concerning scenario. Is there anything that can be done to prevent violence? Horn of Africa security expert: there are steps that can be taken. Here are a couple. International mediation. The international community needs to play a strong role in mediating between the two countries. They can urge both sides to de-escalate and find a peaceful solution. Focus on root causes. Addressing the root causes of the conflict, such as the Ogaden dispute and the status of Somaliland, is crucial for long-term peace. Finding a solution that satisfies both sides is essential. Interviewer: thank you for your insights. This is a complex situation, and your expertise helps us understand the potential dangers involved. Political analyst: what are the chances of resolving the dispute? Interviewer: welcome back. We've been discussing the tense situation between Somalia and Ethiopia. Let's talk about potential resolutions. In your view, what are the chances of resolving this dispute? Political analyst: thanks for having me. The chances of resolving this dispute in the near future are uncertain/challenging/guarded. Here's why. Deep-seated issues. The issues at play, like the Ogaden and Somaliland, are complex and have been simmering for decades. Building trust and finding common ground will be difficult. Internal politics. Both Somalia and Ethiopia have internal political pressures that make compromise difficult. Leaders may be hesitant to make concessions for fear of appearing weak. External influences. Regional and international actors can play a role in either fueling tensions or encouraging dialogue. Their involvement can complicate the situation. Interviewer: that sounds like a lot of obstacles. Are there any reasons to be optimistic? Political analyst: despite the challenges, there are some reasons for hope. Economic ties. Both Ethiopia and Somalia have a vested interest in regional stability and economic growth. Trade and development cooperation could create incentives for dialogue. Shared security threats. Al-Shabaab and other extremist groups pose a threat to both countries. Cooperation on security issues could foster a sense of shared purpose. International pressure. The international community can exert pressure on both sides to come to the negotiating table. Interviewer: thank you for your analysis. It seems there's a long road ahead, but there are potential pathways to a resolution. Including a representative from Somaliland would provide a valuable but potentially challenging perspective. Here's why. Challenge in securing interview. Somaliland is an unrecognized state, and Ethiopian officials might be less accessible for interviews. However, consider contacting regional experts or journalists who cover Somaliland to see if they can connect you with a representative. Here's a possible interview structure focusing on Somaliland's motivations for the port deal. Interviewer: we've heard a lot about Somalia's perspective on the port deal. If we could speak with someone from Somaliland, why did they decide to make this deal with Ethiopia? Somaliland representative: if possible, thank you for the opportunity. From Somaliland's viewpoint, there are several reasons for the port deal. Economic development. Somaliland seeks to develop its economy and infrastructure. The port deal brings much needed investment to upgrade Berbera Port, creating jobs and boosting our economy. International recognition. Somaliland desires international recognition as an independent state. Engaging with Ethiopia, a major regional player, is seen as a step towards gaining that recognition. Security cooperation. Somaliland faces security threats from piracy and extremism. Cooperation with Ethiopia on these issues could benefit both countries. Interviewer: Somalia is obviously very unhappy about the deal. How does Somaliland address their concerns? Somaliland representative: if possible, we understand Somalia's position. However, Somaliland believes it has the right to manage its own affairs and make its own economic decisions. We are open to dialogue with Somalia to find a peaceful resolution to our differences. Here's a brief summary of the key points of the dispute. Longstanding tensions. Somalia and Ethiopia have a history of conflict, particularly over the Ogaden region claimed by Somalia. Fragile Somalia. Somalia's civil war weakened the central government and allowed Somaliland to declare independence. Somaliland's port deal. Ethiopia's deal with Somaliland for access to a port on the Red Sea angered Somalia, who see it as undermining their territorial integrity. Somalia's fury. Somalia expelled the Ethiopian ambassador and closed consulates in retaliation for the port deal. Risk of escalation. This diplomatic breakdown raises concerns about a wider conflict, including proxy wars or renewed border clashes. Absolutely, mentioning the international community's role is crucial. Here's how you can incorporate it. The international community has a critical role to play in de-escalating this tense situation. Here are some key actions they can take. Mediation efforts. Regional and international bodies like the African Union, EU, and the United Nations, UN, can offer their services to mediate between Somalia and Ethiopia. Facilitating dialogue and finding common ground is essential. Urging restraint. The international community should urge both sides to exercise restraint and avoid actions that could further escalate tensions. This includes maintaining open communication channels and avoiding military buildups near the border. Addressing root causes. International actors can help address the underlying causes of the conflict, such as the Ogaden dispute and the status of Somaliland. Finding solutions that satisfy both sides will help prevent future flare-ups. Humanitarian concerns. The international community should monitor the situation for any potential humanitarian consequences. They should be prepared to provide aid to civilians affected by the conflict. By taking these steps, the international community can help prevent a wider conflict and promote a peaceful resolution to this complex dispute. The dispute between Somalia and Ethiopia over the recent port deal with Somaliland highlights the long-standing tensions in the Horn of Africa. The potential consequences of this diplomatic breakdown are serious, and the international community has a crucial role to play in mediating a peaceful resolution. Stay informed about developments in the Horn of Africa. This is a complex and rapidly evolving situation. By following reputable news sources, you can stay up to date on the latest developments and understand the potential impact of this dispute. Thank you for joining us. We'll continue to follow this story and bring you the latest updates. Remember, we're all part of this journey together. Let's keep exploring, learning, and growing. Until next time, stay curious and keep spreading those positive vibes. Thanks for joining in. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment, and hit subscribe to stay tuned for more exciting content coming your way.